finally, good news. You guys ready for it? Down goes Steve King! Down goes Steve King! Steve King, one of the worst guys in politics, has just lost. An obvious white supremacist, almost proudly so, Republican from Iowa, has just lost his primary election. I can't tell you how overjoyed I am. This is the good news America needed in 2020. Okay, so I'm going to give you exactly what happened, and then if you don't know Steve King, I'm going to give you some of his worst and most also hilarious quotes, to be honest. So Randy Feenstra just beat him 52.5 to 36.5, 52% reporting, but the election has been called. Down goes Steve King. Now, even better news. In that same race in Iowa is J.D. Scholten, a progressive, excellent progressive. Almost beat Steve King last time. It's a shame that he'll doesn't get the opportunity to finish him in the general election. But he'll beat Feenstra in the general election. You got to help J.D. Scholten right now, okay? Look him up. He's fantastic. And he was with us in Iowa when I did my big speech there. J.D. Scholten's got to get that seat. But for now, Steve King's lost in the primary, and that's great news for this country. Who would have thought in the midst of all this darkness that we would get this ray of light? All right, now, if you don't know Steve King, wait till you get a load of this. He had said in the past, white nationalist, white supremacist, Western civilization. How did that language become offensive? I mean, he just said it. He said it. So he's, in a sense, you know, let's put it this way, less sophisticated than Donald Trump, which is unimaginable, right? But this guy didn't bother mincing words. He was actually even denounced by his own party, but a U.S. congressman, okay? And he's been a U.S. congressman for a long time, basically defending white nationalists and supremacists with that quote. He had a lot of BS excuses for it, but didn't even really walk it back. And if that wasn't clear enough, there's like 12 of these, but I'll give you one more on that. He says, no, I'll give you two more on that. We're watching as Western civilization is shrinking in the face of this massive epic migration that is pouring into Europe. That's the core of that tweet. They're importing a different culture, a different civilization, and that culture and civilization, the imported one, rejects the host culture. Okay? Hold on, not clear enough? I'll give you one more. He says, he was referring to Geert Wilders, who's a far-right anti-Islamic Dutch politician, and he said Wilders understands that culture and demographics are our destiny. We can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies. Whoa, what do you mean somebody else's babies? So if Chinese folks come here, Nigerians, you name it, right? Jamaicans, I don't know, all these, every one of these that I named, the right wing's like, no! Pakistanis, no! He doesn't mind white people coming. He's like, no, that's our civilization. That's our culture. That's totally fine. You know, as many white folks as possible. But the categories I named, he's like, I mean, that's somebody else's babies. But wait a minute, if they become American citizens, aren't they 100% American? And isn't that the core of this country, that we're all created equal? I thought that was like the single most central tenet of a American Constitution, an American form of government. He's like, nope, someone else's babies. Look, remember this, and this is another reason why this is an excellent ray of hope. Yes, by the way, I'm watching your comments. I always look for the Young Turks badge that lets me know that you're a member, which I appreciate. I look for the YouTube super chats as I'm doing these live. Yes, Steve King is lost. Somebody asked, did he lose? Yes, he's lost. He's lost. So, and now I'll tell you something else that's fair, right? Which is that he lost in a Republican primary. So that's another, to me, that's really good news. Because like I beat up on Republicans all the time. And so I assume that, you know, Or you might assume, oh, well, Cenk hates Republicans. He doesn't want them to succeed, etc. No, I just want them to be better. And by the way, Ajay Prasad, thank you for being a fan from India. I'm here defending everybody, okay? All colors, all ethnicities. I don't mind anybody else's babies, like Steve King. Okay, so anyway, as you can tell, I'm excited today about this news. Otherwise, it was disastrous. I mean, Jesus. I'll get to that in a second, too. But so the Republicans said no. So I love giving credit where credit is due. He didn't lose in the general election. He lost in a primary. Republicans in the middle of Iowa in a pretty red district said, no, this guy's just too racist for us. So to those Republicans in Iowa, thank you. I mean, both for getting rid of Steve King and restoring my faith in America a little bit more. So apparently there is, if you go really, really far down, apparently there is a bottom to the barrel. And we just found it in Iowa. So thank you to the Republican voters of Iowa for making this happen. Okay, I'm going to give you one more quote because it's not only obnoxious, but it's hilarious. God, he has so many on white civilization and how great it is. So about the Dreamers. Now, these are people who were brought to this country when they were kids, so they had no choice in the matter. And they've completed high school, some of them going to college, some of them in the military. And so progressives think that Dreamers should be protected. But Steve King says they're somebody else's babies. He doesn't want them protected. So they asked him, what is your legitimate reason for not wanting these folks to eventually become American citizens? He says, for everyone who's a valedictorian, there's another 100 out there that weigh 130 pounds and they've got calves the size of cantaloupes, because they're hauling 75 pounds of marijuana across the desert. What? I mean, that is one of the most amazing quotes in American political history in my lifetime. So, Cantaloupe Calf Steve King has been eliminated from American politics today. Do I have to bother telling you why that's absurd? I mean, it's absurd on its face, but they were kids when they were brought in. They don't have cantaloupe calves. They didn't drag marijuana in, you racist, etc. It doesn't matter because now he's no longer relevant. As long as you're not in power and you can't affect laws and bills and legislation and things that affect all American citizens, I don't care, Steve King. Go be as racist as you want in the middle of a cornfield, okay? No one cares anymore. All right, and look, guys, just to wrap things up, I mean, things were super dark. I went out right before the curfew was imposed here in LA, and there was a armored vehicle rolling through the streets of LA across Santa Monica Boulevard. Most of the stores were boarded up. There's 108,000 dead from coronavirus. So we have more cases than the other, I think, top 5 countries combined. We've been an absolute disaster. We've handled it worse than almost any country on the planet. We've got 40 million unemployed. I mean, this is a dystopian future. If I told you in the beginning of Trump's term, which I kind of did, that this would happen, all the right wing would have been like, oh my God, you're hysterical. This is ridiculous. You're hyperbolic. And honestly, most of the mainstream media would have said hyperbolic, right? But we are in that dystopian future. I mean, not only did they kill George Floyd in the most horrific way imaginable, but we have a president who doesn't empathize with it at all, barely mentioned it. Meanwhile, has been talking about how he's going to prove how tough he is to demonstrators. He did that photo op the other day where he cleared out everybody with tear gas. And yes, reporters are saying it was definitely tear gas. A reverend on the scene said it was definitely tear gas. And he goes and does that photo op in front of the White House. And he says, yeah. And then today he bragged in the morning about, I dominated them, basically. Now they're not around anymore. You know what happened tonight? Massive protests in front of the White House. So I love that they did that. No one is dominated, but we have this horrific figure. I mean, Back to the Future warned us about this. I mean, literally, Back to the Future, dystopian future in that movie was Biff, who is based on Donald Trump, being in charge, at least in that context. And it was like a horror show. And we're in that horror show. And in the midst of that horror show, as the tunnel has collapsed around us, to see a light at the end of that tunnel, and it's flashing. Down goes Steve King. Down goes Steve King. Booyah! I see the light. I see the light. All right, guys, thank you for carrying us so that we can at least see this. tyt.com/go to keep us in business and keep us sustainable, healthy, and strong, so I can give you nights like this where we're pumped up and good things have happened in the world. See more comments coming in. Wait, Steve King lost? Yes, Steve King! Steve King, legendary racist, lost tonight in his primary. One more time, thank you, Iowa Republicans, for kicking him out. One more time, support J.D. Scholten in that race. He's a wonderful progressive, and he has an excellent chance of winning the general election. And if you can, join down below. Let's do this together. The light in the darkness. Down goes Steve King.